Hello, folks. Welcome to The Twist. I'm Erika Grey.
And I'm Don Pravda. Welcome.
And tonight we're going to talk about the New World Order. And we've got a series of statements from a major European Europhile, Guy Verhofstadt, who now has stated Europe's position in this New World Order and where this is now all going. And basically, after the Russia-Ukraine war, it was as if the nations were in a free fall of where would this land, this new order. We saw Russia teaming with China and India and other nations, and the US with the EU and Canada, along with other nations. And nobody knew where this was going to end up. Well, tonight we're going to show you where this has ended up. And frankly, Don, I think it's pretty shocking. What about you?
Friends, while you're sleeping and having a Labor Day barbecue, and if you think the most important decision in the world is if the Mets win the pennant or the Yankees win the World Series, Mr. Verhofstadt and friends are making a lot of changes in this globe. And I hope you're listening, and I hope you're watching carefully.
So stay tuned for what we're going to show you, these various clips, and Don and I will discuss from Mr. Verhofstadt, leading Europhile, former Prime Minister of Belgium. He's within the EU Parliament Conference of Presidents, delegations, and it goes on and on and on, his positions within the European Union. So he's a major player there. So here goes. And then Don and I are going to have a lot to say.
It's the start of a new world order and the end of an old world order. And you can say that since the Second World War, we got the Cold War, as we call it now, until 1989. And then from 1989, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, we got the so-called supremacy of free market economy and liberal democracy.
Did you hear that, Don? It's the end of the world order, the beginning of a new order. And he's talking about free market economy and liberal democracy as if it's a thing of the past. Did you get that piece?
Well, that is if in fact he's right, the world's undergoing a catastrophe, and this is just the beginning. While we're sleeping, they're going. And while we're on vacation, they're working. And they're working day and night, 24 hours per day.
Yes, I would say they're pretty busy, but now we're going to see what he has to say next.
Since 2014, since 2022, since the start of the brutal invasion, and I call it, I wrote a little book about that already in 2008, and the name of the book was A New Age of Empires. What we entered have since 2022 is a world of empires.
Don, what do you think about Mr. Verhofstadt? First of all, he wrote this book in 2008. Stating Age of Empires, but now he is saying that the world, since the Ukraine-Russia war, has officially entered the Age of Empires, and this is the New World Order. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, he wrote the book at a time when the world was imploding. It's one of the worst years in world history's economics. And now we're moving on to a very, very unusual and complex time in world history and economics. And I think we're going to have to observe these changes very carefully and with diligence.
So now let's look at the next thing he said, which frankly to me was a shocker.
Forget the world of 199 nation states sitting around a big table at the UN headquarters in New York. It had never existed, in fact, that world. We live in a world of empires in which you have 4 or 5 competing empires with each other, not only military, but also politically and also technologically. It's not the world of Fukuyama anymore, where liberal democracy was accepted by everybody, and there was an increase in democracies every year in the ranking. You know that these rankings, and we could see since 1989 that there were more democracies than the year before. That's not longer the case. The opposite is happening. It's not longer the Cold War of the Soviet Union against the United States, with in the middle the European Union or the European idea. No, it will be a world of competing empires, empires of the good, autocracies, empires of the bad, and a big fight between autocratic empires at the one hand and maybe democratic empires at the other hand.
Okay, so now we've got a world of competing empires. That's pretty shocking. And he completely poo-poos the UN. I mean, the UN is now a thing of the past and a rules-based order. And now a thing of the past, it's competing empires, 4 or 5. What's your thoughts on that?
I think what he's leaning towards is a world full of dictatorships and possibly monarchs that want to seize control of the world. And he's expressing that democracy is that of a bygone era.
Yes, and it's pretty shocking. And leading and competing empires. So what he's now stating is that the European Union is now one of these empires that will also be a competing empire, but he did take, you're right, the division of possibly democratic empires versus what he calls autocratic empires. But it's pretty shocking because Verhofstadt is a globalist and the EU was about the rules-based order. Its laws were written based on those of world institutions. And now you have a leading Europhile saying that that's no more. And now they're an empire and we're in an age of empires. I mean, this is pretty shocking.
Sounds like to me he wants to change the rules of which the world is governed.
What he's talking about is a geopolitical order of empires. And, you know, so the United States is an empire, but we are a declining power. But he's talking about these empires, you know, China, India, European Union. Verhofstadt usually states that Russia is a wannabe empire. He will not acknowledge that Russia is an empire. And it's an order that we're not used to. And I think that Biden in this order is really trying to work his hardest to keep this, the unipolar, United States takes the lead. And the more Biden does that, the more he looks like a dinosaur in his foreign policy.
Absolutely.
Well, let's look and see what Verhofstadt had to say next.
But in the meanwhile, dear friends, Stalin is back. Stalin was dead in 1953. Stalin is back, and we don't have a European defense community. We are all individual members of NATO, not capable to defend, in fact, the European Union against a threat from outside.
I don't see how this man, Putin, could be compared to Stalin. Stalin is a murderer in the realm of hundreds of millions of people. Regretfully, he is in a skirmish also for his empire in the Ukraine. However, I don't see the comparisons. I don't see him killing religious groups. I look at him as a man who is interested in his own interest in his own empire. I do not see him as another Stalin.
Yeah, I think that's a real exaggeration. It actually sounds a little kooky to me. It's a little kooky. You know, when you have a power politician like this making a statement that's just pure exaggeration, and there really is no comparison of Stalin to Putin. So I just wanted to bring that clip in here too, because I thought that was a little bit exaggerated. You agree?
Absolutely.
And that's the first thing to do. Stalin is back. He died in 53, but he resurrected under in another name as Putin.
I just want to add that piece too, that he said that Stalin is back and he resurrected under another name as Putin. Resurrected. Your thoughts?
I think that Stalin has 6 letters in his name and Putin has 5. I don't see the true similarities. I do believe that this nation, as we know as Russia, has had very hard-fisted leaders, but there are varieties of them. And actually, Putin has protected his nation. He's protected religious freedom, and I do not see the exact comparisons. Perhaps there's small variations of the same name, but they're very different people.
Yes. We're going to look at the next thing he said.
So the fastest as possible, develop our own system with one authority, a European FCC, a merge of our mobile operators, and stopping thinking that, oh, we need to be the ideal place for competition for the whole world. No, the world will not work like that. It will be competing empires. So in competing empires, thinking that, oh, we can the playground of all the others for economy and for market and for technological developments is a wrong choice. Because the world is not one place. It will be a competing place of empires in the future.
A world of competing empires? How about when he stated that it's no longer going to be a place of competition for the whole world? I mean, that's a major reversal from world trade. Now, it's not going to be a place of competition for the whole world, but of competing empires? Like, this is like, where did this come from?
Well, where did certain people in world history come from? This man believes he's primordial. He believes he's going to lead, and he believes that the dynamic in history is past now, and he is the future, and that is very dangerous.
Or his vision of Europe is the future, yes.
As his version of life and of Europe, and it's very disconcerting. And you might have noted in the past that Churchill is the one who warned us about World War II and Hitler and Germany's future. Chamberlain wanted to appease. Churchill warned the world and readied it for the possible catastrophe of a takeover.
So you're saying that one of these empires will end up taking over from the others.
They will try to do that.
That's a good point, that when he's saying competing empires, that there's going to be the empire that's going to try to then have real rules. So now we're going to look at the last thing he says, because it has to do, it really brings us to the topic then of Israel, which is your expertise, Don. So we're going to listen to what his final comments.
Look at his strange look at this.
I wish you would have
Boy,
said
is
that.
strange. Hey, look at that. I think he's going to play the good guy or the bad guy. Take a guess.
Okay, what was it? What did you say? Look at his strange look.
Do you think Mr. Van Hofstadt would play the good guy in movies or the bad guy? Take a guess and let us know.
And look at his strange look.
Yeah, and
yeah, that is a strange look. We'll take a
maybe
quick
in
look at it
fact
again.
after this he'll become a movie star.
Oh, you got it. That's the only way to do it. And at the end, the interest of all these countries in Europe is to join. Because what the war in Ukraine shows and illustrates us, there is no security for individual countries in this new world of empires outside the bloc, outside the family, outside NATO, outside the European Union. Then you are the victim, to be eaten by these empires of the bad that will still be there in the future. So that's the way forward. And what we need now is...
That's pretty wild stuff. That he said that what the war in Ukraine shows is that individual countries are basically going to have to come under the umbrella of an empire. And what individual country do you represent that this would also be a reference to? But Israel, who would be eaten up by the other empires or the non-democratic empires, that this is the way forward? What's your thoughts?
Well, Israel is in its own, it's in a world of its own. It's under a spiritual protection. Many nations wish to go in and conquer Israel, and they will fail. And this will be another attempt by this empire to try and digest Israel.
You saying that you foresee Europe wanting Israel under its umbrella? Because
Absolutely.
It's basically saying...
Of course. And what is your question right now?
Israel is a small little nation. Israel is not an empire, but throughout Israel's history, in ancient history at least, it was always under the umbrella of an empire. And here we are again in this geopolitical empire age. And you have Verhofstadt stating that nation states, individual nation states, are going to have to come under one of the democratic empires. And right now it's under the United States umbrella. But let's face it, the United States is declining from just so many issues and the level of violence and shootings and just an overall decline. And then you have the dollar that's teetering on collapse because Russia is doing everything in its power to move away from the dollar. The European Union moved energy transactions, has been moving its energy transactions from the dollar. And you have the dollar probably not long for this world because our deficit is just astronomical. And they're building the euro. They're building a capital markets union. They're finishing a banking union, even though Europe is really hit right now because of their shoot themselves in the foot sanctions against Russia. According to Klaus Regling of the European or the Euro's ESM, he stated that the euro is actually in a very good position to weather these storms right now. So the question is, do you foresee the torch going from the United States to possibly the European empire?
Here's what I believe. In ancient times, the Persians had an empire, and they absorbed the kingdom of Israel. In another era, Turks, the Ottoman Empire, was in charge of the land of Israel. Then after them, there was the British Empire, one of the largest in the world. They all failed. Israel is independent. It will not come under the umbrella of any other empire. They will try, and they will fail. They will not succeed. Israel will be under the kingdom of God.
Well said, Don. That was very well said. So this is, I thought, pretty interesting because Verhofstadt basically gave us a few statements where we now know where the free fall ended with the Ukraine-Russia war going on. And it's basically now we are in an empire age, and they will be competing empires, meaning that the empires are going for their own interests. Hopefully Biden tuned into this because he's still in the dark ages of foreign policy. I mean, what's your thoughts there?
Well, we're in Mr. Biden has a little bit over 2 years left. He can change his policies. America has democratically elected him. He has passed a major bill. He has passed other kinds of legislation whereas he has a bump in the vote right now, and he has, in fact, a friend in Israel, and he has other friends around the world. However, U.S. is in a much weaker position. The economy is not as strong as we believe. The GDP is falling, and America is in trouble, and that is the reality. And within a year and a half, that dollar could be tanking, and there could be world crisis. And obviously, these empires that we're talking about in Europe, they're looking for opportunity to seize on our failures.
Well, they will be in a better position to actually do that because Europe has 84 trade pacts to the United States 20 trade pacts, and every one of their trade pacts is more comprehensive in scope. They've got more nations now joining or in the process of joining, and they keep building when meanwhile the United States is declining. Well, folks, that's been it for tonight's show, and hopefully you will tune in next time. And we're going to be next week at the Jerusalem Post Conference in New York City. Don, some final comments?
Thank you. Shalom, shalom, shalom. And the Jerusalem Post Conference is going to be one of the most important events in the world.
Well, folks, stay tuned because we will be reporting from that conference.